The main issue developers face when creating Tycoon games is achieving a sense of balance. Although most games that fall within this management subgenre are perfectly capable of ensuring that their core systems feel fair but challenging, often they fall down in other key areas such as tone and pacing. Video game genres are hard to define at the best of times, and trying to get a grasp on the differences between a Tycoon game and a management sim, it's a fool's errand. The former sits beneath the latter, and an emphasis on financial management is probably the sole differentiator between the two, but for me personally, Tycoon games often feature something other management sims lack: heart. Bullfrog Productions' groundbreaking 1994 release, Theme Park, arguably laid down the foundations for a very specific skew of the Tycoon genre. It wasn't the first management game on the market, but it brought with it something that hadn't been seen before. A sort of whimsical approach that combined realistic management systems within a wholly unrealistic context. It captured the imagination of an entire generation of PC players by allowing them to construct an ethereal funfair that was unrooted from reality. And although the game lacks a number of contemporary features, it still contains a sense of magic unmatched by many other entries in the genre. To be fair, other than 2 Point Hospital, a spiritual successor to Bullfrog's follow-up, Theme Hospital, that was developed by Bullfrog alumni and released in 2018, few games have even attempted to modernise what Theme Park was doing for new audiences. The reason, I suspect, was the runaway success of Chris Sawyer's Roller Coaster Tycoon. Released in 1999, Roller Coaster Tycoon basically expanded upon the foundations of Theme Park in most ways. RCT was more mechanically complex, it offered a greater degree of player customization, and was infinitely more replayable than Bullfrog's release. Roller Coaster Tycoon established the Tycoon genre as we know it today, and has served as the primary influence for the majority of management titles released over the past 2 decades. But it lacked that certain something that Theme Park offered in abundance, that whimsical tone that defined Bullfrog's early PC output. As someone who grew up with Theme Park World, Theme Hospital, and Dungeon Keeper, it's something I felt to be sorely lacking from the likes of Planet Coaster, Planet Zoo, and Parkitect. This is a niche that Let's Build a Zoo attempts to fill, despite its core premise focusing on a tourism attraction revolving around animals rather than weird snake slides and horrors from an unknown dimension. Well, maybe just the former, but we'll get to the latter in just a moment. Let's Build a Zoo is a Tycoon game that lets you construct, manage, and customize your own zoo. You begin by setting up some basic enclosures before adopting some generic animals, such as rabbits and geese. Staff can then be hired to keep your critters fed and their pens free of shit. Once your animals are happy in their new homes, shops, toilets, bins, and benches can be placed to keep your guests satisfied. After the first busload of punters pulls up to your freshly opened gates, it's time to expand. A research centre allows you to unlock new enclosures, decorations, shops, and facilities from an expansive grid. New animals can be adopted from a world map, and up to 9 additional variations per animal can be discovered via controlled breeding. From here, the direction of your zoo lies completely in your hands. And I really mean that, too. Let's Build a Zoo offers a vast array of granular mechanics for you to play around with that ensure your mega zoo is built precisely to your specification. Your animals' diets can be tweaked. You can manage not only the routes your buses take, but the exact type of buses you're sending out to collect your excited guests. You can set zones for your staff, ensuring every corner of your park is kept clean and tidy. I'm just scratching the surface here. The amount of things to interact with is astonishing. A Tycoon game is only as good as its underlying systems, and in that sense, Let's Build a Zoo feels incredibly well designed. Pacing is often a serious issue when it comes to Tycoon games, with many unable to strike a careful balance between throwing new features at the player too fast and holding them back to the point of tedium. But thankfully that's not an issue here. Animals are your primary unlockables. Unable to buy whatever you want from some kind of storefront, creatures must instead be traded with other zoos from around the world. One zoo may offer 2 hyenas in exchange for a porcupine. for instance. Trading isn't always that straightforward, however, with some zoos requesting a specific variation of animal. Thankfully, a nursery allows you to force two animals to shag repeatedly until they produce the desired result. All of this is communicated clearly to the player via a genealogy pop-up that highlights which pairs need to bump uglies to grant you a specific type of offspring. Compared to the games that inspired it, such as Zoo Tycoon and Planet Zoo, this method of unlocking additional animals feels extremely organic. Not only does it make contextual sense, it also results in very few moments of boredom, as you're constantly able to work towards a tangible goal. Paired with the aforementioned expansive unlock system and characters that give you increasingly difficult objectives to complete, you're always on the cusp of unlocking or completing something. In a genre that so frequently leaves the player to their own devices, this solid backbone of progression gives Let's Build a Zoo a great sense of forward momentum and pacing that kept me playing for way longer than I intended every single time I booted up the game. Outside of animal management, the majority of your time with Let's Build a Zoo will be spent fiddling, poking and prodding and tweaking and nudging the game's myriad systems to maximize both profits and customer satisfaction. If you're looking for a management sim that offers a surprising amount of depth, well, you'll be happy with what you find here. Saying that, whereas some tycoon or management games feel like a constant uphill battle, Let's Build a Zoo is actually very easy, at least on a foundational level. Anyway, you can comfortably maintain and grow a zoo with very little effort. That's not to say that the game isn't challenging, however, maximizing visitors, profits, and staff efficiency is tough, and as a result, Let's Build a Zoo feels fair but firm in its approach to difficulty. For me, a little stupid baby with a smooth brain, I was happy enough plodding along at my own pace, but was also comfortable in the knowledge that if I wanted to at any moment, I could engage with specific systems to ramp up that core challenge. This feels like a very delicate balance to maintain, to the extent that I'm unsure how the developers have managed to achieve it. To create a game so system heavy that it can appeal to both casual and hardcore players feels like an impossible feat, yet here we are. On top of all this mechanical complexity is a surprisingly light-hearted, funny experience that never takes itself too seriously. Clearly inspired by Bullfrog's early work, Let's Build a Zoo has humour baked into every facet of its design. For starters, there's the game's morality system, which awards points based on how ethical or unethical your actions are. Planting trees to offset your carbon footprint is considered good, for instance, whereas building factories to turn your excess animals into meat is, well, the opposite of that. You'll also be randomly presented with a number of moral quandaries during play, such as whether you want to help fund an ark to safely carry your animals to the moon in case of a global catastrophe, or help the mafia hide a body by feeding it to your pigs. The morality system is a fantastic addition that will undoubtedly help with replayability. Points for both good and evil decisions contribute towards a total score, with additional facilities being unlocked as you progress down the route of either good or evil. The best part is that there are no consequences for choosing either track, and if your sole purpose is to create a bastard zoo filled with geese painted like peacocks, alongside the reanimated corpses of animals that have died brought back to life via animatronics that is not a joke, then the game is more than happy to allow you to fulfill your desires. And it's here, at this intersection between cutting humour and complex mechanics, that Let's Build a Zoo truly shines. This is a Bullfrog game in all but name, a title that finally expands upon the ideas and themes from the original theme park. A game that delivers delightful whimsy without compromising on the actual moment-to-moment gameplay that makes the tycoon genre so beloved. Adjusting a slider to change whether your hot dogs contain more eyeballs than prime cuts is inherently funny, but it's also a solid gameplay mechanic that allows the player to make micro-decisions that affect the wider operation of the zoo as a whole. It's wonderful. While we're on the subject of humour as a function of design, we have to turn our attention to CRISPR, a facility you unlock early on that allows you to clone animals as well as create your own. Once you discover a certain amount of variations for a specific animal, you unlock the ability to combine it with another. This expands the game's roster of animals to around 800, and much like the morality system, gives players enough reason to keep coming back long after they've seen everything else the game has to offer. It's not as prominent a feature as I expected it to be. Creating and then displaying a horse-snake hybrid has no effect on the overall rating of your park, despite the horrific implications of such a creature existing, but it's still a neat little gimmick that's fun to play around with. Ideally, I'd love to see this feature expanded further, perhaps in some kind of expansion pack or future update. The game is, sadly, not without its flaws. All this complexity means you'll constantly be digging into menus to tweak certain parameters. Tooltips, overlays, and objectives are all grand, but it can often feel like the game is relentlessly informing you about tiny fires that need putting out. For some, this intensity may be a positive, but I just found myself desperate for a moment to catch my breath and enjoy the zoo I had spent so long building without having to pause the game to do so. Some animals are also very good at breeding, shall we say? Although a recent patch has tweaked how often rabbits and geese do the shame dance, I still found myself having to bulk release animals back into the wild to stop their pens overflowing with, well, poo, basically. The thought of my zoo sending 30 capybaras scurrying into the British countryside en masse every other week is really funny though, and made the arduous task of double-clicking every individual animal I wanted to get rid of every 20 minutes a slightly less painful task. Still, these are minor gripes in what is a largely polished release. The game's visuals are gorgeous, its Stardew Valley art style a perfect fit for a game in this genre. The lo-fi art allows you to build huge parks that attract thousands of guests without any kind of performance issues, and to be honest, it's just nice to play a Tycoon game that isn't presented in 3D. The animals themselves are super cute, and although their pixelated sprites never technically move, they're brought to life through bouncy animations that give them a lot of character. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with Let's Build a Zoo. As a huge fan of Tycoon games, I found myself satisfied with its number of in-depth systems, and its bullfrog-esque humour lends the game an unmistakable identity that I really connected with. Despite some minor flaws, Let's Build a Zoo is a substantial package that is sure to delight. It is an essential release that is sure to occupy countless hours of my life for years to come. Well, thank you very much for watching this review for Let's Build a Zoo. If you enjoyed this review, please do consider giving this video a like and make sure to subscribe to 7 out of 10 for more indie coverage reviews, things like this. I'll be back very soon.